and I'll be back in a little bit. I'll be sitting on my cushion within ear range.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Santa Monica KTC's Thursday night Sangha. We're so glad everybody's here, especially Lama Kathy. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We're happy to host you as always. And we would like to let everyone know that we sent out a newsletter with announcements for this evening and what our schedule is like. I think this is the last meeting we're having in August, or is there one more? No, I think that this is it for August. Next week is September already, right? So we have a lot of events coming up in September. So please check out our website, which is santamonica.ktc.com. You can also make a donation to Lama Kathy this evening by clicking on the link in the newsletter that we sent out and checking out our website to see what's happening, to become a member if you would like to. All the information is on there. So with that, I'll give it over to you, Lama Kay, and thank you so much.
Oh yeah, no, thanks very much. I'm so happy to be with you this evening. I'm just really, as I mentioned before the recording began, I'm really happy because the Vajra master from Tronggu Monastery in China, Tibet, has just arrived in Columbus, and we're very excited for his visit this weekend. And we're going to be recording his teaching on the Mahamudra lineage supplication. So it's something you can tune into either by Zoom or by recording afterward. So this evening, before we begin, I'd like to just sit for like a couple of minutes, just a nice little bit of a quiet sit, starting with the Bodhisattva motivation, offering our body, speech, and mind to the three jewels of refuge, and then taking refuge in the Buddha as the teacher, the Dharma as the path, the Sangha as the community, and then making the aspiration to tame the mind for the benefit of ourselves and all beings. We take the position of meditations, either sitting comfortably on the floor, sitting in a chair, or even lying on the floor if that's your preferred position for meditation. Making the aspiration that our training in mindfulness and alertness will be of benefit to us and others. Starting with one deep breath, breathing out, and then allowing the breath to come and go naturally. We follow the movement of the breath as it comes in and goes out, and make this moment of mindfulness our meditation. So we'll be meditating for just a couple of minutes. Okay, that concludes our short meditation this evening. We dedicate the merit of our practice of meditation to the benefit of all. Okay, so before we get started, does anybody have a question about the practice of meditation? If you have a question about the techniques or how you experience meditation, you can ask them. And if you have no questions, then we'll dive into the book.
I have a question.
Yes.
Sometimes it's difficult for me to know when I'm really like stepped away from my thoughts, or if I'm just really immersed in them, thinking that I'm stepped out of my thoughts.
Okay. So what you're saying is that as you are meditating, you are placing your attention on the breath, and your mind is somewhat quiet, but you are not sure if you are noticing all of the thoughts that arise or not. Is that
Correct?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, this is something that Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche has talked about. It's I think that the easiest way to tell the difference is to spend some time with your technique and become what Rinpoche says is, when you're not sure, then it's probably a good time to sort of straighten your posture a little. Straighten your posture a little bit, and you can use the technique that is used for torpor, actually, which is where you what Khenpo Rinpoche says to do in his book Dharma Paths is to aim your gaze upward, not straight up, but somewhat up and away from you.
Yes.
And then imagine that there's a shaft of light going up into the sky.
Okay.
And that as you breathe out, your breath goes up into the shaft of light. Then it comes down from the shaft of light, and it enters into your nostrils and into your chest. And that light then illuminates you from the inside, almost like you were a bottle, an empty glass bottle, and a light was being shown inside of you, right?
Yeah.
And then doing that for several breaths, I don't know, 3, 5, whatever. Then that will sort of brighten and bring up the quality of alertness. And then what I would do at that point would be then to return your attention to the breath and follow the breath, or follow whatever your object is. If your object is a visual object, place it on the table again, and so on. And what I would do is then work with the breath for a while, or your object for a while. And when a thought has arisen, you notice it, and you can actually sort of acknowledge its presence, let it go, and then return your attention to the object for a fresh start to your object. And then by sort of refreshing your quality of alertness in that way, that will assure that your meditation is not falling into torpor. And it's really interesting to think that thoughts running under the surface are torpor. You could really say that it's like a mix of torpor and agitation.
Okay.
The Khenpo Rinpoche said that the phrase for this is water running under ice. It's
Mm,
like, there's a layer of ice on
yes.
a frozen mountain river,
Yeah.
but there's water moving underneath it. And he said sometimes that your mind just continues to pursue thoughts and pursue lines of thinking while you're able to work with the technique. So one of the ways is to artificially bring up this quality of alertness to see if that breaks the situation open a bit, so that you can see what you're doing. But I will look up, because he does say more about this in one of his books, but I'm not sure which of the books it is.
Okay.
But I'm almost sure he has more advice than just that bringing up the quality of mindfulness. Because one of the things he says is that when meditation is at its best is when you are being present with your object of meditation, without becoming discursive about the object of meditation. You're not like making comments about the breath, or you're not making comments about the environment and so on. And sometimes it is it's good to kind of switch things up. He said you should do your sessions, he said, only for as long as you can do it without being overcome by torpor or agitation.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking I would try that and see if bringing
Yes.
up that quality of alertness a bit, sort of the luminous quality of mind, the experiential luminous quality of mind through the artificial means of looking up and
Yeah,
seeing.
great.
Yeah. So see what that does, and then check back and let me know how it worked. And hopefully by that time I will have gone through my, because I think I know where it is in the book, but I'm not 100% sure. So I don't want to take too much time looking it up tonight, but send me a message, and
right.
let me know how that's going, and then remind me, and then I'll take a look for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, the mind is very tricky sometimes. I had a friend who said that she was so good at maintaining thoughts that she could count her breath up to like 100, but in the background she was still entertaining stories. And so the cure for her was to stop counting, and then that caused a little wobble for her in her ability to keep with the technique. It made the technique a little more difficult for her. And so then that allowed her to bring up her mindfulness so that she could see when she was wandering.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? Yes.
I have a question, and this is something I realized started to encounter several years ago, and I asked you about it, and I couldn't really articulate the question. But I've come to realize that there are points in time when I'm in a calm, non-discursive state. It seems like I'm just like resting in awareness. But I also realize that there's the monkey mind that switches on and off, but then there's a completely nonverbal communication that which is usually about the body, and it says, for example, it's when I realize I'm slumping. It's kind of like, it's not a discrete message, it's just the awareness that posture's gone bad and I straighten up. And it occurred to me that what the resting in awareness feels like is that I'm resting in whatever it is that communicates about the body. It says, this hurts, your posture's gone bad, or things like that.
It's like the observer, the person, the one who's sometimes they call it the witness or the observer. Yeah. And yeah, you're both the witness and what is observed. Your mind is both witnessing it and is what is being observed. And momentarily, it's so I remember one time Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche was told about this phenomena of multitasking, and he said, "Oh, multitasking is he says it's just an illusion." He said, because you can only have one thing on your mind at any time. And so he said, what you're doing is actually switching back and forth so quickly between subjects and so forth that you have the appearance that you're doing more than one thing at a time, but you're not. And so what I'm thinking it is that the more comfortable we get with our awareness and resting in awareness and so forth, the more comfortable we get with seeing how our mind is at any given time. And you're right. Sometimes it's taking the shape of commenting about the posture, and sometimes it's taking the shape of just being present.
But it's not an articulation. It's just an awareness that the posture has gone bad. It's an awareness that I've been bitten by a mosquito, things like that. It's not because the monkey mind is really discreetly in articulation. It's a form of speech. Okay. The witness is really clearly totally nonverbal.
Yeah, I think that it's what's interesting about it is that we're aware of all of these things, whether they're verbal or not. We're aware of them. And I don't know that one is preferred over the other. I think that I remember that Khenpo Rinpoche once said that it's important to meditate for short periods of time frequently. And remember, I may have talked to you about this, about what Situ Rinpoche called the mini session of meditation, where he said the problem that people have is that they try to meditate for a very long time, and then if they try to meditate for a very long time, then they become somewhat confused about what they're doing, or they're not certain about their experience. And so he said that he encouraged his students to do what are called mini sessions.
Like 15 minutes, for example?
Well, whatever, he said that it could be, it could be 15 minutes. And he said you would start with refuge. This is Situ Rinpoche, start with refuge and bodhicitta, prayers, and then you would apply your mindfulness technique. And then you would make sure that you applied your technique in such a way that you returned your attention when it wandered, regardless of whether it was wandering in one direction or another. And then as things became more complicated, like it was harder to follow the technique, a person would then dedicate the merit of that mini session, and then let their mind relax after they dedicated. And then they would begin again with refuge and bodhicitta, the four immeasurables, the technique, and just staying with it. It sounds like I'm going to have to get this book out and read. So let me go off camera for a second. I had to go and pull a book off the shelf, and I can never do that in a graceful way. Okay. All right. He talks about, okay, here's sort of what's this is what addresses Daniel's question. It's something that he talks about, where he talks about stagnant tranquility. Yeah, and wandering tranquility and a defective tranquility. So he says, okay, you want to know what to watch for? Here they are. He said that stagnant tranquility is where you achieve a state of tranquility and mistake it to be the ultimate result of Buddhahood. You mistake it to be a state of enlightenment, and therefore you stagnate. In other words, you think, okay, I've accomplished it now. I don't need to do anything else. And then that's not what Daniel was describing. But the second one sounds close to it. Wandering tranquility is the second kind of problem. And this refers to being distracted while you are practicing by lack of certainty about how to practice, where you are going with it, and so on. And this is, this sort of wandering tranquility is this water running under the ice, where you're just kind of like, and that's why you bring up the quality of mindfulness at that point to counteract the not being sure about what's going on. And then a defective tranquility is simply being unable to remedy the two defects of torpor and agitation. And then he says, in any case, you should put the essence of your effort into the cultivation of a state of tranquility. And so what he's saying here is that that he said, if you can avoid, well, hang on. There, he was saying something also in this particular text about he says, he said, it is important to practice your meditation technique only for as long as you can maintain clarity or lucidity. If you force your mind to stay fixed on this chosen simple object to the point of fatigue, your awareness could become dull or adulterated by conceptualization. To prevent this, you place your attention on the object for brief periods, then rest the mind, return to the object, again rest the mind, and so on. And so this is Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche's answer to the mini session. Sintu Rinpoche prefers to have people have a beginning and an end, with refuge and bodhicitta at the beginning and dedication at the end, and then resting the mind at the end. But Khenpo Rinpoche said you can break up your sessions into mini sessions simply by placing your attention for a while, and then letting up on the I guess you could say letting up on the technique, and then letting your mind rest briefly, and then applying the technique again, and then letting up. And he says, practically speaking, this means that in the session, you focus your mind on the object, and then you let your mind relax briefly. Then you return to the object briefly, and again let your mind relax, and so on. In this way, by bringing your mind to rest on the object repeatedly for short periods, you don't become so tired of it that you give in to distraction. And so that's kind of nice, right? So I just thought I would share that. Does this help at all?
Yes.
Not quite, right? Right.
Well,
Bruce?
it's
Not quite.
Well, no, I mean, it's an experience, and this is some information, and I will bear it in mind, and we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what I think you're thinking is that there may have been some progress in your meditation because you have this this sense of the witness, right?
Well, I don't know. It's progress. It's a change.
Uh-huh.
I don't know enough about meditation to describe anything as progress.
Okay.
Or
right.
at any rate, any progress anything I consider progress is my own apprehension of it.
Right. I can understand that. So something else that Rinpoche says, he says, what matters most is the way you rest your mind on your chosen object. You rest your mind in a direct perception of the object without any analysis of its nature. Your perception of the object is thus direct and simple, without any conceptual apprehension of inherent substantiality to the object. So he said the faculty, here's something interesting. The faculty of mind engaged in regarding the object is not a fixating faculty. And I think this addresses what you are talking about. The faculty of mind, repeat it again, the faculty of mind engaged in regarding the object is not a fixating faculty. The focus is on direct experience and not on conceptualizing the perceived characteristics of the object. Since it is a direct resting of your mind on the chosen object of perception, you are not attempting to imprison your mind with force or tension. If your mind comes to rest, it's allowed to come to rest. When the mind moves, when a thought arises and so on, you don't try to stop it or slam it down. Although there is an objective focus and you are not losing track of it, you let your mind expand freely rather than attempting to imprison it. And I think that this is kind of what you're talking about here. You're letting your mind expand freely in the experience of your awareness. And then he says, this also means you do not impose any idea on the activity you are engaged in. You don't think, oh, I'm meditating now, or this isn't meditation, it's not going well. You don't invest a great deal of hope in mind coming to rest or cultivate anxiety that thoughts will arise and so on. Through abandoning any attempt to control or suppress the functions of mind, you're actually cutting through all of the thoughts that arise. So hopefully those are helpful.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah, I would say
I'll keep watching.
Okay, I think that's really it. I think it's just because when he talks about looking at the mind, and resting the mind in its own awareness, he talks about that in very much a similar fashion to what you described, but he says, let's see. Yeah, he says, if you're not thinking about the past and you're not thinking about the future and you're not conceptualizing about your experience in the present moment, he said, all that's left is to rest simply in the direct experience of the present moment of mind's natural awareness. It's a state that's free of any contrivance. There's no attempt to add or remove anything from your state of mind. You don't attempt to control or alter your state of mind, other than simply resting in lucid awareness of the present moment. So,
okay,
hopefully that's helpful.
I think so.
Yeah, very good. Just keep going and let me know how it's going. Okay, you can send me an email and kind of let me know, and then I can check it out with my meditation experts.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, because the things that I don't know the answer to, I know how to ask up. So that's good. I have several people who've asked some questions that I can't answer, and I'm going to ask the Lopon when I have some time this weekend. So hopefully I'll be able to ask some of those.
Lama Kathy, was that Dharma paths?
No, this is one of the 10-day teaching transcripts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is the transcript called Pointing Out the Dharmakaya.
Thank you.
Yeah. And that's I don't know what the rule is for getting that one. I forget, but you can always write to the bookstore and ask what it is, and then we'll figure it out.
Sure, thanks.
Okay, sorry, I decided that I would do a meditation thing today. I'm sorry. Yeah, we should make progress in the book, I suppose. Are there any other questions? Okay, then if I remember correctly, in our discussion of joyful wisdom, we're in the section on Buddha nature. And so what he was talking about, he's been talking about the Four Noble Truths, and now he's on the third noble truth, and he's saying that the Buddha didn't stop teaching after the first two noble truths. If he had continued, if he had stopped teaching there, it would be pretty depressing teaching, because it's like life is suffering, and suffering is caused by grasping and fixation. The end. But he didn't. He kept teaching. And Mingyur Rinpoche says here, he says the principle of Buddha nature, knowing that in essence our mind has the basic nature of unlimited potential. And he says this principle of unlimited potential is implied in what he calls the positive prognosis of the third noble truth. And Mingyur Rinpoche says, whatever discomfort we feel, whether it's subtle, intense, or somewhere in between, subsides to the degree that we cut through our fixation upon a very limited, conditioned, and conditional view of ourselves, and begin to identify with the capability to experience anything at all. He says, eventually it's possible to come to rest in Buddha nature itself, the way, for instance, a bird might rest in coming home to its nest. In that moment, suffering ends. There is nothing to fear, nothing to resist. Not even death can trouble you. And so, so I think that all of us are seeking peace in meditation, and we're seeking to know how our minds work and how our minds form our experience. And the teachings that he's giving here about resting the mind in natural awareness is exactly the same teaching that Khenpo Rinpoche is giving, and pointing out the Dharmakaya, how it is to rest mind in its own natural awareness. And then Mingyur Rinpoche, in the next part of this chapter, describes the experience of sitting with his beloved father as his father was passing away. And what Mingyur Rinpoche was touched by was the certainty in his father's expression, and the peace and the lack of fear in his father's face, and so forth. And so then they talk a little bit about that experience. And they said that at the moment of his death, he sat with his legs crossed in meditation, his hands resting comfortably in his lap, and his eyes focused straight ahead. Very gradually, he said, his breathing slowed and finally stopped. We didn't even realize that he had died for several moments. He remained in that meditative posture, which in Tibetan is known as tuk dam, which very roughly could be translated as death meditation, a process of consciously experiencing the separation of consciousness from the physical body. And he remained for 3 days in that posture before his body began to slump. And he said that his skin remained pliant, and so forth and so on. And he said it was miraculous to him to see this. And he said, but the signs were there. My father died with full awareness, looking calmly at what most people consider the most dire form of suffering as a luminous expression of his Buddha nature. And I think that these are inspiring stories, and coupled with our own moments of clarity and moments of clear understanding and clear meditation are helpful to us in keeping us encouraged to continue our Buddhist path and our meditative path. So I'm really hoping that all of us continue to work on our meditation and to get advice and to work with our minds. So Mingyur Rinpoche then, the next section is entitled Buddha Moments. And he says, most of us don't recognize that we have Buddha nature until it's pointed out to us. And so he tells, and of course, Mingyur Rinpoche is a storyteller. And so to illustrate what he's talking about, he says, not long ago, I heard a story about a man in India who was given an expensive watch. He had no idea what it was at the time and didn't know that it was an instrument that could tell the time. And so wearing this amazing watch, he was walking around asking people, can you tell me what time it is? And then they would say, well, you're wearing a watch. That will tell you what time it is. And then he said, a watch? What's that? And then he said, they said, well, look at the thing on your wrist. And he says, oh, no, this is a nice piece of jewelry that was given to me by a friend. What does it have to do with knowing what time it is? And the person said, well, I can't believe you didn't know that. And so whoever gave it to you should have explained it to you. And he said, well, maybe he didn't know what it was either. Be that as it may, the stranger said, he gave you a gift that you didn't know how to use. Now, at least, you know how to use it. And I love the idea about this because it's an aha moment. We have a moment of clarity about the way things are. And he said, I like to call these reminders Buddha moments, opportunities to wake up from the dream of conditioned awareness. And he said, I experienced one such Buddha moment during my first teaching tour in California, where people urged me to swim as a form of exercise. I didn't want to go, but my host had already set up an appointment at a local club. So I jumped in and I was immediately a success at swimming underwater, which is to say I sank like a stone. And so again, his storytelling, he says, I remembered as a child, I used to swim in a small pond. It wasn't very deep. He said, and I wasn't really swimming in any style that you'd call elegant. He said, I just was flapping along doing dog paddling. The person who had brought me to the swim club was amazed. 1 minute you were sinking, he said, and the next minute you were swimming. How did you do that? He said, I remembered. For a few moments, I was confused by the side of the pool. Then I remembered that I could swim. And then he said, the experience is similar, perhaps on a small scale, to the recollection of the power and potential of Buddha nature. Deep within us lies the capacity for boundless wisdom, capability, and compassion. We don't tend to remember it until we're thrust into sink or swim situations. And so I myself have had some experiences of just recognizing how vast the mind is. One of my teachers said, when you go to the ocean, rest your attention on the horizon and let your mind dissolve into the joining of the heaven and the ocean. And that was a lovely meditation, being able to just relax and let go, because that does exactly what Rinpoche said in the book. Khenpo Rinpoche said in his book, you allow your mind to expand freely within your object of attention rather than trying to imprison it with force. So hopefully that's helpful too. And so after that, the next section, he talks about seeing the good in people, seeing that they have Buddha nature too. I remember Situ Rinpoche told us once, if you can be touched by anything, a beautiful melody or dance or a performance of some kind or art, it's he says that's proof that you have this basic nature of kindness and goodness. And he himself talks about seeing the good in situations. And so again, as a storyteller, he's telling a story. He said, I saw this for myself when I received a late night phone call from a friend who was a singer. She was in Europe at the time and had just returned to her hotel room after appearing before her enthusiastic fans. Imagine appearing in front of that many people and hearing them shout about how much they love you. After the concert, she returned to her hotel room to work on her laptop. Unfortunately, the battery was dead, and she didn't have the proper adapter to plug in and recharge her computer. She called the front desk for assistance, and they promised to come up right away. But moments passed, and no one came to help. So she called me. And I said, well, what can I do? Just appearing on a sidewalk makes thousands of people happy. But alone in my motel room, she says, I am now miserable. This stupid little problem with the computer, she said, has ruined my night. So he said, we talked for a little bit about accepting impermanence and the challenges of fixating on relative reality. And I said to her, you tried your best to do something about your computer, but if the problem isn't solved as quickly as you want it to be, you can use the frustration and anger you feel as a focus of meditation. Don't run away from your feelings. He said, don't run away from your feelings. Don't try to shove them away. Just look at them directly. If you do that, you might be able to see the awareness that enables you to be conscious of those feelings. This is important, and I think it has an impact on something that was talked about a few minutes ago in the question and answer. Don't try to run from things. Don't try to shove them away. Look at them directly. If you do that, you might be able to see the awareness that lies beneath them, that enables you to become conscious. If you can even touch that awareness, you will start to see the problem you're experiencing now in the context of all the good qualities you have, your talent, your ability to give joy to others. He said, why let one difficult situation blind you to all the positive things you bring to the world? And then she said, I feel better talking to you. Thanks for the reminder that one little problem won't ruin my life. Moments after I hung up the phone, Rinpoche wrote, I thought a bit about our conversation. Moments later, I realized what I had wanted to say, but hadn't had the time to formulate as a complete idea. Wisdom, capability, loving kindness, and compassion, they're what we're born with. Frustration, jealousy, guilt, shame, anxiety, greed, competitiveness, and so on are experiences we learn, often through the influences of our culture, our family, and our friends. And so he concludes, the positive prognosis of the third noble truth is that the limited or limiting ideas we hold about ourselves and others and every other experience we have can be relinquished and unlearned. So I love what he has to say about this, because it's so Buddha nature seems like it's so far away that, oh, that's something that other people experience, but not me. But if you can relax your mind even in a single moment of pain and suffering, you can begin to see it in a different way. This happened to me not long ago, and I think I may have talked about this the last time I was with you, where I had had a very painful experience during a hospital test. And I remember being very lost in the pain of it all. And then suddenly I found myself thinking, well, you could visualize yourself as Chenrezig. Why don't you try that? And so I did, and it worked for about a second or two. And then I dove back into the pain of it all. But the moment of relinquishment, where my awareness was no longer taking the shape of this painful moment, but my awareness was taking the shape of Chenrezig, it was a bit of a relief to see that things could be changed just like that. And this is what Mingyur Rinpoche is talking about. When he says you look deeply into a thought, what there's a couple different ways you can do this. One way is to look with your mind's eye at the emotion you're feeling and look into it deeply. And then sometimes what will happen is the emotion will relinquish. It will release a little bit. But another way of doing it is looking at the mind that's having that thought. And when you do that, you're no longer thinking that thought. You're standing outside of it, looking back. And I think that this is very similar to what Bruce was talking about, the moment of relinquishment that happens when you notice that the person or the one who's commenting on experience is also the one experiencing, and that one can blend into the other seamlessly just by allowing the mind to relax. So I'm kind of glad we dove into the book. It seemed to have something to say to us. Well, there's a few minutes left before we have to close for this evening. I wonder if people have questions or curiosities or things they'd like to talk about. Have you had a moment of Buddha nature?
Lama K, so I have this alarm that goes off on my watch.
Yeah.
Noon every day.
Uh-huh.
And I wrote underneath it, mindfulness alarm.
Yeah.
Which is off at noon. And sometimes when I'm in my day or something's going on and I'm just all over the place and I'm able to, like, if I'm not working, but if I'm able to, it's just that moment where I get to stop. And I do it all the time. I just stop. I go mindfulness alarm. I turn it off and I kind of tune into that.
Mm-hmm.
Just that moment. Even that it's not a long meditation, but it's just a reminder thing. So that's been helping me a lot for a long time. I've been doing it.
See, and that's actually a really brilliant thing to do, because one of the things that Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche told us we could do is that we could just the instruction was you can just let your mind drop, or flop was what the translator said. You can just when you're between tasks, this task is over and this one hasn't started yet. You just allow your mind to relax in that moment and do nothing. And I think that sounds really similar to what you're talking about with this mindfulness alarm, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I need it. And it's just so great. It's every day. And if I'm with somebody, and they hear it go off and it makes a nice sound, like, oh, your alarm's going off, I'm like, mindfulness alarm. And it helps them too. Some people look at me like I'm a little crazy, but most people get it.
Yeah. I mean, it's California after all, right?
Well, yeah, exactly.
And
usually out here, it's more like it's 12 o'clock. Check your chakras and your,
Yeah. Okay. I get you. But it is lovely, isn't it?
It's really good for me. I haven't done it for so long. It's right here on this little watch thing.
Well, and what's really interesting is that I feel like the confidence it gives us is really neat, because what that means is that if we can do it even just once, right? Just let everything go and just let your mind drop for a moment. That it just shows us what's available to us at any moment, anywhere. And that's a wonderful thing. So Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche said that short moment of meditation where you're between tasks, and he said, just let your mind drop. And he said, and let it last as long as it naturally lasts. Don't try to force it. Don't try to make it into something, because then what happens is that your ambition gets the better of you. You know, it's like your ambition to have a long meditation or a deep meditation. It shows, you know, your ambition shows up as a feeling of tension surrounding the situation, and like, am I doing it right, or is it okay? You know, but the idea is that if you can let it go and just relax the mind and let it last as long as it naturally lasts. And he said, nobody's going to know what you're doing. He said, they're just going to think that you're being thoughtful for a moment, right? And then he said, and then when it's over, and you go back to doing the next thing. So thanks for sharing that. That's a great idea. Other things that people might want to talk about. I can't see raised hands, so you can just speak up.
So Lama Kathy, this is just something I wanted to mention, and I was having a problem, and it kind of surrounded by the Dharma and something, and there was a conflict, and I reached out to a longtime practitioner, and I came into the conversation thinking I was all mindful and discussing it and everything, and I was waiting for this great answer, and her response to me is, go meditate. And I was like, what? Wait, what? And she's like, yeah, I'm serious. Just go meditate, and meditate a lot. And that did get me to kind of stop and have my mind rest from all these questions and anger and angst. And I was like, all right, I'll try. So just wanted to see if you had some comments about that.
You know, I tell you what, when I was a new student of Dharma, and Khenpo Rinpoche had just come to the US and was starting to teach for the first time, that was frequently an answer he would give, would be, you know, you need to go sit. But that doesn't mean that we can't try to resolve conflicts. But that I don't think it's a replacement for being able to skillfully resolve conflicts. But I think that if I remember my mind training text, you know, in the Great Path of Awakening, when we're stuck on something, you know, if we feel that a harm has been done and we can't forget it, then I suppose a person could just meditate, and then when they're just meditating, they won't be who I forget which one of my friends who is a psychologist said, you won't be feeding the beast, you know, which is the part of our mind that wants it to resolve a certain way. Like, I would like this problem resolved, but I would like to have it resolved the way that's good for me, where I feel affirmed, you know. I don't know if this happens to you, but this happens to me all the time, you know. So I would say that well, first of all, did meditating help?
Well, you know what, I think what happened is it was a great suggestion because it stopped the monkey mind, or I made an attempt to stop the monkey mind. It was really hard for me to meditate because I still had all those thoughts going on, but the longer and the more that I tried, the more I was able to step back. So yeah, it did.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'd love to say, oh yeah, it always great sit and this and that. It was hard, but I think it helped. Yeah.
I get it. But see, in a way, what it is that we're trying to go beyond our usual habit, isn't it? You know, our usual habit is like, I can solve this. This can be solved. This situation is solvable and I can solve it, or whatever, right? We would like to believe that. And that's not a bad thing to want. It's not a bad thing to want. But see, what happens is that sometimes unsolvable situations cause us to run like a hamster in a wheel, you know? We just keep going around and around and we're not going anywhere, right?
No.
So choosing to do something different was what she suggested to you. I mean, I couldn't say, you know, but right, wrong, good, bad. But I can see why a person would say that, because Khenpo Rinpoche used to say that to us. You need to meditate some more, because I think what it is that fixation is causing us a lot of pain, right? Our fixation on wanting things to come out a certain way and to resolve in a certain way, it's really tough. And in the Great Path of Awakening, that what they said to do if you're in conflict with someone, Khenpo Rinpoche gave a teaching on this too. The way Rinpoche said is I think a little easier to practice than Jamgon Control, because Jamgon Control, says, mentally give your body away, and stuff like that. I don't think most people understand that part, but Khenpo Rinpoche said, he said, if you're in conflict with a person, you imagine that that person is with you and in front of you, and you pray to the Buddha, and you don't pray to be protected from the person that you're in conflict with. You pray for the Buddha to protect both you and the person you're in conflict with. And then Rinpoche said, you make a gift in your mind of everything you have and everything you own, all of your merit, all of your goodness. And then he said, you send that gift of everything to the person you're in conflict with. And you do this every day. And he didn't say how long to do it, but what I found out when I had to do this, with someone I was in conflict with, I did it until I felt better, because the other person's not going to change. But what will happen when I do this is I'm gifting them every day, right? And that's a way of giving up control,
Yeah.
Right. And so I have to give up control every single day by giving them everything.
Yeah.
And that doesn't change them, but what it does change, it begins to heal the part of them that's me. My buddies in recovery, they like to say, you spot it, you got it.
Yeah.
And so we have some of these negative qualities that we see in other people. We have them too. And the idea is that when we spend all the time focusing on their bad qualities, then ours get stronger, our bad qualities.
Yeah. Fully.
Yeah. It's there's a couple of stories in the big book of AA that have to do with that my dad used to tell me, so, but the idea though is that if we can, even just once pray for the person, even if we can't give them everything through our imagination, if we could bless them with light coming from Chenrezig, that would be a good way, because even if we can't do it, Chenrezig can do it.
Yeah.
Just pour Chenrezig's blessings down on the person and dedicate it to peace and happiness for everyone. So I don't know. It's another way of relinquishing.
Yeah. No, good. Thank you. That's great.
I appreciate you sharing that. These are tough things I think being a human being is not easy, because we got so many things that happen, right? Anything else to talk about tonight? Oh, I see we're running over a little bit. Well, we started a little late, so I can take another one if there's one more out there. Okay. Well, I want to thank you all again, for bringing yourselves to this meditative session. And I'm really happy to hear that you're working with your meditation, and that some days it's easy, some days it's not. But in all situations, mind has the capacity to relax into the present moment of awareness. And that's something that's there for us. And as Mingyur Rinpoche calls them Buddha moments, when we've just relinquished and that fixation, which is really, as he says, he calls it the positive prognosis of the third noble truth. Next month, we'll talk about the fourth noble truth, which is the path. And I look forward to chatting with you then. Let's pause for a moment and dedicate our merit. Through this merit, may all achieve the omniscience of Buddhahood. May it defeat our common enemy, wrongdoing, from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may we free all beings. May we free all beings. May we free all beings. Thank you, folks. Thank you so much. It's great talking with you.
Thank
Thank
you, Lama Kathy. Thank you. See you next.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Omane Peme Hung, everyone. Please
Good
be
night.
well.
Okay, bye-bye. Good night.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.